Everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Ren and I make videos a couple of times a week about books and pop culture. Today I'm going to talk about the queer books that changed my life. If you've been on my channel for a while, then you will probably be able to guess some of these. So the first one that I want to talk about is a non-fiction book, and that is A Short History of Queer Women by Kirsty Lower. I read this book in 2023 and it's 200 pages. I was staying at my friend's house, so I had to go from like central London to outside of central London, like the outskirts of London, and I read it on the train all the way there, read it that night when I went to bed at her house, and then I finished it on the tube ride back into central London. And honestly, this was phenomenal. It talks a lot, it is a history of queer women, and it talks a lot about like queer women at the very beginning and like the first recorded queer women and the island of Lesbos and Sappho. It was funny, it was educational, it made me do loads more research into what Kirsty was talking about, and I just thought it was absolutely amazing. Like, genuinely just one of the best books I've ever read. I tell everyone to read it. I just thought it was so insightful and so good and so well put together in such a short book. And honestly, like, it was one of those books that I finished it and I was like, this is going to just stay with me forever. This book has in fact changed my life. And I absolutely love it. I think it is brilliant. And then we have William S. Burroughs' Queer. Now, when I was a teenager and I first found out about the Beat Generation, it was because little teenage me had a massive crush on Kristen Stewart. I was obsessed with the woman. Like, I loved her. Anything that Kristen Stewart did, I wanted to do, right? Kristen Stewart was in the film of On the Road, the book by Jack Kerouac, and I was like, I'm gonna go watch that film. And in fact, it had such a limited release in the UK that I travelled to Liverpool to watch it with my friend because I just had to see On the Road. And I'm so happy that I did that. Like, it was such a phenomenal film. It had such a profound impact on my brain. And then I read the book because the book was on my recommended reading list for my GCSEs, so I was like, well, I'm gonna read it anyway because Kristen Stewart's in the film, so I'll read it. And that is why my channel used to be called Ren on the Road, because that book impacted my brain. But as I've gotten older and I've done more research into the Beat Generation, I will completely preface this and say that I understand that some of them were a bit shit. They were a bit shitty and they did some shitty and questionable things. I do think that their literature was incredibly impactful at the time that it was written, and I think that it was really important and I think that it is still really important to not erase the impact that they had on queer literature. Allen Ginsberg's Howell trial, I did a whole podcast episode about that, and that was huge in talking about what we could write, what people could write about, and getting queer literature as something that could be written about without being penalized for it. Like, he could have gone to jail, but that trial he won. This book was actually written in the 1950s, but it wasn't published until 1985, which is the case with a lot of books. There's a fair few books that I've read where they weren't published until later on, or they were published posthumously because of the time that they were written. Like, sort of the similar vibe that a lot of the Beats did, where they like sort of, or it's autobiographical, but it's written in more of a fictional way, which is what Kerouac did with On the Road. That is his story. He just changed the names. It's funny because it's like possessive, and there's definitely some unhealthy relationship dynamics in this, but I think that it is so unflinching and so impactful and really packs a punch despite being really short. It did have an impact on my life. The whole Beat Generation in general, I think, really sort of shaped how I viewed queer literature, and it made me aware that queer literature existed back then and that people were writing it. Queer people have always existed in all shapes and forms. The way that they wrote about their queer experiences, and it was so unapologetic and unflinching. I think that's really good. And then we have Peter Darling by Austin Chant. Now, I don't see lots of people talking about this book, but this book, oh my god, Peter Pan is one of my favorite stories. I was always enthralled with Peter Pan. The original J.M. Barrie book, the Disney film, all the different retellings, like, it was everything that I loved. It was this fictional place. It was this not wanting to grow up, mermaids, fairies, like Tinkerbell. I always used to dress up as Tinkerbell. Peter Pan has had such a profound impact on my life. So this is my favourite Peter Pan retelling. Peter, who is trans, so he is Peter Darling. So Wendy was never this separate girl, right? Wendy is who Peter was born as and christened as, but Peter is a boy and Peter is his name. He goes back to London and all the Lost Boys say that he went back to see Wendy, but obviously that's not the case. So years later, he goes back to Neverland, and Neverland doesn't seem to need him anymore. He's trying to fit into this Neverland, and the only person that seems to actually have missed him was Captain Hook. It's this phenomenal exploration of their relationship, because it is a relationship between them. And when I first heard that premise, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. But it's actually explored so well, and Peter's transness is explored so well, and this concept of going to somewhere where you feel safe and having this safe place where you can go and you can create these rules and you can create what happens. But then also getting to a point in your journey and healing where you can leave that safe place and know that you can create somewhere else for yourself, and you can do that. I read this book in one sitting. The biggest thing for me is if you know that when the second I finish the book, if I try and find fan fiction, that's how you know it's had an impact in my life, because I don't want it to end. And I absolutely loved it. And I've read Austen Chant's other books and they're so good. But yeah, Peter Darling genuinely changed my life. Now we have Loveless by Alice Oseman. Now, of course, all of Alice Oseman's books I love and have had different impacts on my life, but Loveless is the one which I would say has changed my life. Alice spoke about things in Loveless where I had not been able to articulate that. Loveless focuses on Georgia, who has always read romances and fan fiction, but that doesn't feel right for her in her real life, and it's this exploration of being asexual and aromantic. The way that is explored in this, I think, is such an important way to describe it. Obviously, asexuality and aromanticism is a spectrum, and people feel different things depending on who they're with, depending on the person that they are. Like, really, really, really important to explore all of those things and to write stories where every element of that is explored and that whole spectrum is explored. But for me personally, this explains how I feel, and for me that is really, really important, and this changed my life. I remember finishing this and just sitting there like, oh my god, like, oh my god, there's words for it. Like, it has been articulated how my brain works, and I think that's so important, and that has had such a profound impact on me. And I absolutely adore Loveless. It really, really did change my life, and I can't I can't properly express it, but I was like sending my friend like pictures of paragraphs, and I was like, this is what I've been trying to say but haven't been able to say. So on a similar vein, we have The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. Now, this is the book I read the most recently on this list. I read The Pairing early as an e-arc, and then have all of my wonderful physical editions. I really, really loved this. I thought it was such an interesting take on, like, to already have the characters having broken up was really interesting, to like go into that and then root for them, but knowing that they had this history. But the thing that really stands out for me is Theo's journey, and the way that was explored in this, and the way that Theo was talking about it. Again, I was sending pictures to my friends like, this is me, this is what I've been trying to say but haven't been able to articulate, and I loved it. It was so important to me and so perfect, and just such an amazing exploration. The way that Casey is able to talk about these things, I mean, the way that Casey writes is just brilliant, but like the way that Casey was talking about it and talking about Theo's journey with being non-binary and everything that involved, it was just so amazing, and I absolutely adored it, and it changed my life. These are the last two, and I think everyone probably knows what they'll be, But the first one is another Casey one, and that's Red, White and Royal Blue. Cannot explain how this book has impacted me. This story resonates so beautifully to me. Just love these characters. I was reading it and just really related, and again, Casey was talking about like explaining things that were just so good, and it's made me so happy. Like my friendships because of this, and like us all, me and my friends watching the movie together, and like everything, and it's just so lovely, and I have so many happy memories associated with this book now. It was just so perfect, and just it really has had such an impact. These characters mean so much to me. I've never had characters like it, they just, that I really resonated with, that explained so much, and this is just such a key part of like my queer like journey. Like it's just so good. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, this is definitely on the top of this list. It had such an amazing impact in my life, and I love it so much. It's so dear to me. And then we all know what this one's going to be, don't we? Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. I can't properly articulate what this book means. I read it when I was 19 years old. I didn't know what it was about. I ordered it on a whim, and I read it in one sitting when I was on holiday, and it felt like my life had shifted. Like it genuinely felt like the trajectory of everything had shifted because I read this book. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but it did. And it just made my brain just think about so many things and be aware of so many things. I really related to Ari and what it was like to be in his brain. It was so real and raw and open. Like it was this, it just felt like how it feels to have all of these things in your brain, and it was just phenomenal. So the book itself changed my life, like literally did it, like the trajectory of everything and the way that I thought about everything and the way that I thought about myself and everything. It just changed it. But then because I spoke about it so much online, it's led me to amazing opportunities in like I talk with the director of the movie and also the illustrator of the cover. Like I did an interview with her, like she's been to my house, like it's and I've gotten to have these amazing opportunities and see this film come to fruition and see the passion that these people are putting into it, and it's amazing and wonderful and beautiful, and I love it. And again, so that's also impacted my life, and then the friends I have because of this book, like the way I've been able to talk about this book, the way I've been able to share this book, every message I get that says I read this book because of you means the world to me. And it has in fact changed my life for better. I will always be thankful for 2 boys in El Paso, Texas. I'd love to know if you guys have read any of these books, and I'd also love to know the books that have changed your life as well. Please let me know. We'll have a huge discussion in the comments. If you guys are new here, then I make videos a couple of times a week about books and pop culture, so if you want to stick around and join us, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell. And as usual, all the links to my other social medias will be in the description as well. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're doing really well, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.